Welcome back to another episode of Norton Media Center Presents. I'm your host, Anthony Champagne. This show is the show where we learn all about familiar faces in and around the town of Norton. I'm lucky to be joined today by State Representative Michael Chiasson. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Anthony?
I'm good. Now, I understand that being a state representative, you just got sworn in on New Year's Day this year, correct?
I did, yep.
So what has your first month been like in office?
First month has been chaotic. It's the best word I can use to describe it. It's a lot of learning, a lot of getting used to new things, meeting new faces, trying to get settled at the State House. But it's been great, really interesting, and looking forward to just continuing to work and build relationships with everybody in the community and help in any way possible.
Is it everything that you had expected so far? Is it way more than you thought? What's your thought process right now through the first 4 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really had like a set expectation of what it would be once I got sworn in. It's kind of a crazy thing to think about. Like, you're working so hard from April to November, you're campaigning, and then all of a sudden the election comes and then it just stops. And you win, you lose, either way, it's just over. And we were lucky enough to win, but then there's downtime between November and when you get sworn in, and you're just thinking and you don't really know what to expect. I don't think anybody does until you do the job. So I wouldn't say there was any expectation there. I think it's extremely interesting, and it's definitely been a good interesting thing, and a nice part to learn.
Let's go all the way back to the beginning. When did you officially decide that you were going to run for state representative?
So that was April 24. April 2024 is when we pulled our papers, got our signatures, and had all that stuff passed in and got on the ballot officially then.
What prompted you to want to run?
It was really just, I think I have a unique perspective on just where I come from. I'm a small business owner. Right after high school, I went straight to work. I worked in the Carpenters Union for 4 years. And then when I was 22, I went and started my own business. And I always say that I figured at 22, if I failed or fell flat on my face, then gave me plenty of time to recover and figure out where to go from there. Luckily, that didn't happen. So I was able to build the business to a point where it allowed me to take some time and campaign. So I think that's one of the reasons. That's no real history of college, just went straight to work. I'm a young family. Me and my wife live in Foxborough. We bought our first house almost 4 years ago now, and looking to start a family here, obviously, and grow in the community. And I just think that there's a lot of people like me that have similar backgrounds that might not necessarily be represented on Beacon Hill.
Well, it sounds like you've had a very successful career so far, and you're around my age as well, yep. So this is great to hear. When you officially announced you were going to be running for state representative back in April, what was the reaction from friends, family, your wife? What was their reaction when you said, you know what, this is something I'm going to do, I want to do it?
So to be honest with you, I had gone back and forth a little bit about actually running, and it's a massive time commitment, and you do put yourself out there. So I had gone back and forth, and my wife actually was the one that said, no, listen, like, you got to do this. You really got to do this. So it's nice to have somebody in your corner like that pushing you. So she was huge throughout the whole campaign. And then once I told my mom, my sister, my brother, they were all on board. They loved it. My brother is 8 years younger than me, and we have obviously a great brotherly relationship now. Growing up, it was a little more like a father-son relationship. If he watches this, he'd probably be like, I don't know if that's the case, but it was. I coached him for 6 years and right all the way up through high school, and it was just with that age gap, it was kind of more that relationship. But anyways, he left for the Marines in July, so he didn't get to see the whole campaign. He was here for the beginning half of it, but luckily when he finished his boot camp, he had 10 days of leave after boot camp, and just so happens the day that he was going back was election day. So he was able to have his phone again and was able to talk to him. He found out the election results as we did, so that was always nice to have. And then obviously I had my wife and my mom and my sister with me on that day as well.
Very nice.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, is your brother stationed somewhere now?
So he's finishing his second, I don't know, I think it's MOS training for what he's doing. He's at Camp Lejeune right now, and then that is March 11th he graduates, and then he will be permanently stationed at Camp Lejeune, just on the other side of the base. So that's
What's-
in North Carolina.
What's your brother's name? I just want to give him a
James.
quick shout out.
James,
All right.
yeah.
Well, James, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for joining the Marines, and we greatly appreciate you. So going back, Mike, to when you officially started getting signatures back in April, what was that process like? Did you have to start marketing yourself through social media? Were you going door to door throughout the towns that you represent? What was that process like?
Yeah, so that was actually a very interesting time. Part of the reason why I was going back and forth on actually wanting to run was me and my now wife, we got married in April. So it was kind of a chaotic time then too. It just was busy. We had the wedding, we had the honeymoon. It was just a time crunch. So yeah, we knew some people in the towns that we could reach out to that I had built some relationships with over the years. And then we did a little door to door. We were out in front of Stop and Shop and Shaw's and all the grocery stores, just trying to get our signatures. We needed 150. We ended up with I think 237 certified or something like that.
Nice.
So we got plenty. It's always nice to have extra because you never know at the end of the day what might happen with those signatures. Some might not count, some do count. So it was nice to have those. But it was definitely a crazy time in April, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the wedding
Yep.
and then getting the signatures and going through this process. It sounds like it was unbelievable chaos.
That's just kind of how I do things. I dive right into them and learn on the fly. I feel like that's the best way to learn. If you don't have another option, it forces yourself to learn. So
Nice. Now, what are the towns that you represent?
So it's the first Bristol district. It's all of Foxborough. I say about half of Mansfield and half of Norton. So it's precincts 2, 3, 6, and 7 in Mansfield, and precincts 3, 4, 5 in Norton.
Take me through the build-up to Election Day in November. What's going through your mind? How are you feeling? Just put me in your shoes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of work, a lot of time went into this campaign. The biggest thing that we did and the biggest time pull, I would say, or commitment was door knocking. We knocked on over 15,000 doors throughout the campaign from, let's say, May to November. And that was massive. We were out every day, every weekend, after work, or even sometimes during the day. If I had some free time, I'd go out and I'd knock on doors. So when you're doing all of that, it becomes routine. It's just something you do, right? And like I said earlier, when it's over, it's just like, now what do I do?
Right.
But so pairing that with going to a bunch of local events and trying to be as present as possible in the communities. We were in a couple parades. I know Norton does a great Halloween parade that we were in right before the election. And then we were working through our social media presence. We're still continuing to try to build that up. I think it's a great way for people to get in touch. It's easy. We're there. We're accessible. And it was definitely useful during the campaign for sure.
So I noticed that you said that you would do the door-to-door
Yep.
campaigning when you had free time. So you were still working your full-time job as you were doing all of this?
Yeah, so it's, as a business owner, and it hasn't always been like this. I definitely, when I first started, like I said, I was very young. I was 22, and I always say I knew the trade very well, but I didn't know the business side of it. So I had a few years of a learning curve with that to really work on the business and developing just how to scale a business really and learning about it. So I took that head on, and as that started to come into its own, the business allowed me to free myself up a little bit and still be operational. So it would give me time occasionally during the days, but definitely every afternoon I could get out there by 1 o'clock or so and try to hit the doors. I mean, knocking on doors during the week, during the day is not necessarily the best thing because most people are working, so you don't really get in touch with them.
Right.
So we try to hit that 1, 2 o'clock window and then go until dark, and try to actually talk to as many people as possible. I mean, that's really what it's about.
So I know you mentioned that April of last year was a very busy time for
Yep.
you, but of course that busyness went throughout the rest of spring, summer, into the fall, and into November.
Yep.
How did you manage everything in your life? You're married, you've got friends and family of your own, you've got a house, you've got a business, and you were on the campaign trail to become a state representative. And I'm sure there's many other things. How did you balance life? How did you handle everything?
To be honest with you, I wish I had just like a straightforward answer I could tell you. It was one of those things where you go day by day and you're like, okay, I know that I have to do this, this, and this today. And it's very much the way that I set up my business as well. It's, okay, today is this, this, and this. We got to get that done. These are top priorities that have to be done. Something that could maybe get pushed off to tomorrow would be on the bottom. And it was just very much schedule driven and just being on top of things. It's very easy for stuff to get slipped through the cracks. So there were a lot of long days, still a lot of long days now, but it's good. One thing I always have been, is a worker. I mean, just from when I was little, that's all I ever did was work. And I think that really is a bonus to running a campaign and having a business and a family. You just figure it out. You learn how to balance everything. You juggle. You get good at juggling.
Yeah. Take me through election night. Where were you on election night? Who were you with?
Yep.
And then what was your reaction as the results started coming in and then you saw that you were the winner?
Yeah. So election night was it was pretty crazy. So the whole day, it's a long day. If anybody that's ever been a part of any campaign would know, we start at probably, the polls open at 7, but I think we got to our first poll at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, got our spots, got our signs out, and made sure that we had stuff there for our volunteers that were going to be holding signs throughout the day. And then I actually spent a good amount of time in Norton on that day, but I made sure I was at all the towns, and then I ended the night in Foxborough when polls closed at 8. And then from there, we had a little watch party, if you want to call it that. We were just at Jake and Joe's, where we have one of our fundraisers this year. And obviously, my mom, my sister were there. My brother was on the phone. There was a bunch of people from the community that we had built relationships with that had helped out during the campaign. They were there. Some of the volunteers that were holding signs were down there. And then the former state rep, Jay Barros, was also there trying to guide me and say, these are the numbers we're looking for. If you can pull this off, that'd be great. And so just as they started coming in, it was interesting to see and watch. It was kind of a surreal moment. Like, I don't get overly worked up about much, and I was still pretty stoic that night, but it's just like, it doesn't hit you fully until, I don't know, I think maybe after I got sworn in, it was more real, but that night it was just like, wow, okay, all right, we did it. That was kind of that feeling anyways.
That's so great to hear.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you're going from door to door and you're speaking with people,
Yep.
and even now that you're sworn in and you're a state representative, I'm sure people are reaching out to you a lot. I know you've mentioned before in our production meeting that what's important for you is keeping those contacts and making sure you're making connections with people. How do you handle when they're talking to you about things they would like to see, things maybe they wouldn't like to see? How do you handle all of that?
Yeah, so I think number one, the role of a state representative is to be present and available and easily accessible. I think that's huge. And when I was campaigning, my cell phone was everywhere. It was on my website. I wanted people to reach out because at the end of the day, I'm not representing myself. I'm not representing a party. I'm representing the 43 to 45,000 people in my district at Beacon Hill. So what I do when I have people come to me with different ideas or things that they like or don't like is I take it all in, and you try to keep a list of who's on what side, and then you kind of weigh it out for who has, or not who, but what topic has more support, and then you kind of vote that way. And that's part of me continuing to keep the business. I think it's important to not lose that day-to-day touch of what it's like. You don't want to be just stuck on Beacon Hill and just become an out-of-touch politician, which I think a lot of people are. So I think it's important to stay grounded, know what's going on in the communities, and still live that life of every day. And you know what it's like when groceries are growing up, when gas goes up, when young families are struggling to buy a home. Like, that's all stuff that I've lived, I am living now, and I will continue to stay on top of that because it's important. That's really what our role is.
Have you been to Beacon Hill in the last couple of weeks?
I have, yep. I was there, I'm actually going tomorrow, but I was there on Thursday. We had our first session on Thursday, full formal session.
Has it hit you yet with you sitting at Beacon Hill with all of the other state representatives, and there you are serving in the government of Massachusetts? Has it sunk in that you are here, one of these selected few by the people to go and represent the people?
Well, that makes it sink in a little bit more when you say it that way, to be honest with you. I mean, it does. When you're sitting in the chamber, like the House chamber is really, it's a gorgeous room, to be honest with you. It really is. It's historical. And when you sit in there, I remember the first day when I got sworn in, I was sitting in there, I was just looking around. I'm like, oh, this is very cool, first off, but it is that surreal moment that it's like, well, all right, all that work, all that stuff we were doing all summer and all spring, this is why. And now when you're there, it's a very serious, and I take it very seriously, that you're there to represent the people in your district and to do what's best for them and to try to help them in every way possible. So it's definitely not taken lightly, and it is a surreal feeling for sure.
We were talking in our production meeting before doing this interview, and I had mentioned how you're around my age, and it's so great to see someone of our age level being interested in local politics, running for state representative, not only running, but winning the election, and now you're representing us up at Beacon Hill. What's your thought process when I tell you, or when I mentioned younger local politicians getting involved? Is that something that you feel as though has been needed for a long time, and not only local politics, but national politics as well?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I am always encouraging anybody. I encourage my friends, but a lot of them are not, like, I'm not going to get into that, but I encourage as many people as I possibly can to get involved into it, because it was something when I was younger than I am now and just starting the business, I really wasn't super involved. I would say the business really drove me to be more involved. And I've learned a lot just from those years of engaging and putting myself out there and trying to learn what is going on and following politics locally and nationally. It's important. It's more important than what a lot of people think it is. I know it's not always easy and the news can be negative, but if you can find a way to get your media that works for you, it's important to pay attention at least. You don't have to know everything, but just have a little bit of knowledge about what's going on. It goes a long way. But if anybody wants to get involved, I think it's extremely important. And if anybody is out there thinking about getting involved, I'm happy to talk to anybody and tell them the little knowledge that I have so far about how to run a campaign.
We're speaking with State Representative, Michael Chiasson. Now, in order to be a local politician, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to be personable, and you've got to make those connections. You must have developed a skill like that at a very young age. Was there someone in your life who really instilled that personable trait in you?
I don't know if there's one person in particular. I think it's just my whole life growing up, I would say. If you could roll it all into a ball, it's all the different life experiences. It's what where I come from, what I've done, whether it's through sports, coaching, coaches that I've had, my mom, my sister, my aunts, my uncle. Like, it's all of it wrapped in one. And then I try to be a sponge in every single environment, especially now, but just growing up, I always was trying to be a sponge. And you take it all in, and then you try to take the best bits out of all of it, and then you try to make yourself the best possible person you can be anyways. That's what I try to do. It's not always easy, and I'm a constant work in progress. You always got to be striving for the best, I think.
Were you somebody back in middle school or high school where you were so personable and putting yourself out there, people would say, you're like a politician here. You're one of those that are going to run for office one day?
To be honest with you, no. I really wasn't. I played sports and I worked. I didn't keep to myself. I had my friend group, but I was never like class president or anything like that. I never ran for anything. I didn't really put myself out there in that way. I always was personable with people, but I was never, I think if you had met me in high school or middle school, I don't think you would have said that guy's going to run for state rep at some point.
Were you afraid of public speaking at all?
Not afraid, but I'm definitely not the best public speaker. Working on that. But it's more, I don't know. I don't know why I never did, to be honest with you. I just probably had my bubble, and I was just comfortable in my bubble, and that was it. And then in order to continue to get better and make yourself better, you have to come out of your bubble. You have to try. You have to try new things and keep going.
Are you somebody who needs to write a speech or follow a script prior to representing the people up on Beacon Hill, or if you're speaking to a group of individuals who are supporting you, are you someone who needs to prepare a speech, or do you feel as though you're better doing it on the fly and having it come right off the top of your head?
I would say that I'm still working through that, to be honest with you. I don't know which is a better option for me. A lot of what I've done has been kind of just off the top of my head and how I feel, which I think is great. And I think it's important to be genuine when you're speaking. Sometimes when you have prepared speeches, it might come off as not as genuine because, somebody else could have written that or whatever it is. So I do think it's important to come off the top of your head or say what you're thinking at that time. That being said, you do tend to forget some things when you're speaking in front of a group and you're just going off the top of your head. I know that's happened to me before, even if it's something as simple as just thanking you for having me here. It could be something like that, but then you think back and you're like, oh, I definitely should have said that, or I forgot about this. So I'm still working through which is the best way to do that or handle that situation, but I definitely like to speak just in general.
Why has Michael Chiasson been so successful? Can you answer that question for me? From being a business owner to becoming a state representative at this age, how have you been so successful?
Yeah, the problem is if you ask me that question, my answer to that is Michael Chiasson is not successful. That would be my immediate response. It's part of that. Always keep growing. Don't settle. Don't be happy where you are right now. Keep growing. Keep developing yourself, and just keep pushing the limits and see where you can go. I think that's the most important thing. I say with my business, there's a lot of times where people get wrapped up in their day-to-day stuff. I know I do. And every now and then, it's good to step back and be like, what would myself 5 years ago think of where I am right now? And I hardly ever do it, but somebody told me that once, and it really stuck with me, so I try to do it. And 5 years ago, one, I would never think that I would have ran for state rep, never mind one. Two, the business would have, where I am now, would have been like my end goal for the business. So to be there now, all right, that means the goalposts just move, and we can continue to grow, continue to figure out new ways, new revenue, new business ventures, and continue to go. So I would say I'm not successful. That's okay. the short answer to that.
You're a very humble individual. What's something that has come up from your supporters throughout your campaign trail, and now that you've been sworn in? What's something that a recurring theme that you've been hearing, and something that you really would like to address up on Beacon Hill?
I think a lot of it is affordability. Affordability is huge. It's huge across the country, but specifically this state, it's very expensive to live here. Some of it, when I campaigned, affordability was one. The migrant crisis was another one that we hit on all the time and that people talked about. And I think they almost go hand in hand. There's a lot of money being spent on the migrant crisis, and it's not that we definitely don't want anybody on the street, and we don't want babies not having clothes or diapers or food, or mothers or families to be split up. But comes a point where things are not sustainable, so we need to maybe take a different direction and see where we can go, what changes we can make so that we're still keeping people safe, healthy, but also can steer the state in a direction where we're not spending crazy amount of money that's just not sustainable at the end of the day. So those two things go hand in hand. I always come back to them because they were big topics on the campaign trail. So that's part of the affordability in the state. That's a big thing for me.
And do your fellow peers feel the same way, that the affordability is one of the biggest issues facing the state of Massachusetts right now? I
think if you talk to any elected official in the state, they would say affordability is big. They'd probably also say housing is another big one, because I know that housing came up on our campaign trail as well too. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear consensus across the board that affordability, housing are big issues in the state right now.
So I know you just got sworn in a month ago, and it's easier said than done, but how do you think we should go about tackling the affordability issues here in Massachusetts?
So it's one thing I talked about when I was campaigning is really paying attention to where every single penny is going in the state. If you can do that, you can find where there's some waste or where you might be able to scrape back and reallocate some of those funds. Schools, I always go back to because they're a huge issue in all of my towns, but not just my towns, all the state, really. The schools always need more money, and rightfully so. They do an incredible job. It's one of the toughest jobs on the planet, I'd say. Being a school teacher or working in the schools, it's not easy educating our kids. So any support we can give them is huge. And if you think back, this is where I loop in fiscal responsibility and the migrant crisis together. If we're spending over $1 billion a year on a situation that we don't have kind of a plan or an end goal, and we just keep spending it, that's $1 billion that could be going to every single one of our towns, to every single one of our school districts, that could change the funding schedule that we do in our budget for our schools. And it's a big thing, and I don't know exactly how we change that. I know that we've laid out some plans in the House and the Senate actually about how we could rework the shelter program so that it might be a little more sustainable and affordable, but it's just a matter of getting through the process and getting it done is the big thing. But it's just important to remember that there's so much money being spent on that issue alone. When we do get it under control, there should be that same amount of money sitting there that we should be able to reallocate to different things. And I would say schools are probably top of the list, in my eyes anyways. So it's an important issue, really is.
No, I agree. Do you have anything you would like to share with your supporters or for the viewers who are watching?
First, just thank you for putting me in this situation and trusting me to be your state representative. Secondly, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions, or if you have something that's weighing on your mind one way or the other, send an email to me. We have our phone number is on our website, our email's on our website, and jump on our social medias. We try to update those almost daily, just so you know what's actually going on in the day-to-day with Beacon Hill, what we're voting on, where I am in the district, and if you ever need to get in touch with me, it's even easier on there. So I don't know if you want me to plug those or if you want to put them on the bottom of the screen. I don't know what you want to do.
Where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so State Representative Michael Chiasson is my Facebook page. Instagram is Rep Chiasson. And then on the State House, if you go on malegislator.com, you can search my name, and that has all my contact info for email and phone number for the State House. And then the Facebook and Instagram have my website on there as well. So that's another way. You should also, another plug, sign up for our quarterly newsletter that will kind of give you a breakdown if you missed something during that first quarter, or any of the quarters really, of what's going on at Beacon Hill and where we've been and what we've been working on, just so you can stay in touch.
How do people sign up for the newsletter?
It's on our
website.
website. Yeah, it's on the
okay,
website.
Terrific.
Yep.
And I want to get you out of here on this. Your pin on your suit has reflected some light over the last few minutes, and even in the production meeting, the sun's glare was reflecting off of it. What is the pin?
So that's a Massachusetts House of Representatives pin. They give it to you when you get sworn in, and it's something that pretty much everybody in the House wears when they're in session or when we're out and about in the community. Mm-hmm. The Senate has a similar pin that they wear when they're in session or when they're out and about. It's just kind of a notation, I guess. If you see me walking down the street with the pin, you know who your state rep is. I don't know. I guess that's why they wear it. I'm not really sure. But I was told that we wear it to everything we go to in the district. And I said, okay, I can handle that.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us
Absolutely.
here today. State Representative Michael Chiasson joining us here at Norton Media Center. I'm Anthony Champagne. This is Norton Media Center Presents. Thank you so much, Michael. And we'll see you next time, everybody.